Marcus Chen's knuckles turned white as he gripped the leather steering wheel of his Porsche Taycan. The morning sun glinted off the Detroit skyline, but he saw none of its beauty. His phone buzzed incessantly, 17 missed calls from his CFO, 9 from the board chairman, and 3 from his lawyers. None of them bore good news. 3 weeks, he muttered through clenched teeth, speeding past the early morning traffic. 3 damn weeks. Titanium gate of Titantech Industries swung open automatically, recognizing his vehicle. The sprawling manufacturing complex stretched across 12 acres, a monument to his ambition, his genius, his ruthless climb from a middle-class immigrant family to the pinnacle of American industrial success. At 38, Marcus Chen was the youngest CEO in the automotive manufacturing sector. Forbes had called him the turbine titan. Bloomberg praised his revolutionary approach to engine design. Today, that revolution was dying. He slammed his car door and marched toward the executive entrance, his $1,000 Italian shoes clicking against the polished concrete. Inside, the atmosphere was funeral quiet. His assistant, Jennifer, looked up with red-rimmed eyes. "Mr. Chen, the board is waiting in conference room. They arrived 30 minutes ago." "Let them wait," Marcus snapped, heading instead toward the production floor. The moment he pushed through the heavy double doors, the silence hit him like a physical force. 300 workers stood in small clusters, their arms crossed, their faces etched with worry. The massive assembly lines, normally roaring with mechanical symphony, stood frozen. At the center of it all loomed the source of his nightmare, the QX9000 turbine engine. $8 million of custom German engineering, a masterpiece that was supposed to revolutionize their production capacity. The engine that would secure their $50 million contract with AutoNation and cement Titantech's dominance for the next decade. Dead, completely, mysteriously dead. "Mr. Chen," his head engineer, Dr. Victor Hoffman, rushed over, his usually neat gray hair disheveled. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. Behind him stood 4 other engineers, all flown in from Munich at $500 per hour each. They looked defeated. "Tell me you found something," Marcus demanded. Victor's shoulders sagged. "We've run every diagnostic, replaced the thermal couplings, recalibrated the pressure systems, rebuilt the entire ignition sequence. The turbine should work. Theoretically, everything is perfect." "Theoretically doesn't pay my workers," Marcus's voice echoed across the silent factory floor. Hundreds of eyes turned toward them. "We're losing $500,000 every single day this monster sits idle. AutoNation pulls their contract in 4 days. 4 days, Victor. Do you understand what that means?" "Sir, It means bankruptcy. It means 300 families on the street. It means I become a laughingstock." Marcus's face flushed red. "The turbine titan who couldn't keep his own turbine running. That's my legacy." A young engineer spoke up nervously. "Mr. Chen, perhaps if we order replacement parts from—" "We've replaced everything," Marcus roared. "The problem isn't the parts. The problem is that none of you can figure out what's actually wrong." He turned away, running his hand through his perfectly styled hair. His father's voice echoed in his memory. "Marcus, in America, you must be twice as smart and 3 times as ruthless. No one gives Asian men respect. You take it." He'd taken it, clawed his way through MIT, dominated at Stanford Business School, crushed his competitors. But this engine was crushing him. Marcus walked toward the QX9000, his footsteps loud in the oppressive silence. The turbine was beautiful in its complexity, a 20-foot-tall maze of steel, copper wiring, and precision-engineered components. It had worked flawlessly for 6 months. Then, 3 weeks ago, it simply stopped. The first failure lasted 2 days, they fixed it. The second failure lasted a week, they fixed it. Now this, the third failure, had stretched beyond 2 weeks with no end in sight. As Marcus circled the engine, he noticed movement in his peripheral vision. Someone was standing near the auxiliary panels, so still he'd almost missed her. It was one of the cleaning staff, an older Hispanic woman in a faded blue uniform, gray-streaked hair pulled back in a simple bun. She held a mop in one hand, but she wasn't cleaning. She was staring at the engine with an intensity that seemed out of place for someone in her position. Maria Santos. He'd seen her around for years but never bothered learning her name. Why would he? She was part of the invisible army that kept his factory clean, necessary but unremarkable. But something about her posture caught his attention. She wasn't just looking at the engine. She was studying it. Her head tilted slightly, as if listening. Her fingers traced along one of the coolant pipes without actually touching it. Then quietly, so quietly Marcus almost missed it, she spoke to another worker nearby. "They're looking in the wrong place." Marcus froze. Had he heard that correctly? He whirled around. "Excuse me, what did you just say?" The cleaning woman, Maria, jerked back, startled. Her dark eyes widened with alarm. The other worker, a young mechanic, quickly stepped away as if distancing himself from trouble. I'm sorry, sir. I didn't mean to." No, please." Marcus's voice dripped with sarcasm as he strode toward her. His management team materialized behind him like predators smelling blood. Did the cleaning lady just suggest that 5 German engineers with doctorates are looking in the wrong place? Maria's weathered hands tightened around her mop handle. Her eyes dropped to the floor. "I apologize, Mr. Chen. It's not my place to." "To what?" Marcus laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "To offer your expert mechanical opinion. Please enlighten us, share your wisdom." The entire factory floor held its breath. Workers edged closer, forming a loose circle around the confrontation. Some looked away uncomfortably. Others watched with a mixture of horror and fascination. Victor stepped forward diplomatically. "Mr. Chen, perhaps we should." "Shut up, Victor." Marcus kept his eyes locked on Maria. "I want to hear this. You've been watching us work. You've seen my engineers fail repeatedly. So tell me, what are we missing?" Maria's voice emerged barely above a whisper. "The sound, sir." "The sound." 3 days before it stopped completely, the sound changed. The pitch dropped by maybe half a tone. Nobody seemed to notice. But engines, they talk. When they're in pain, they tell you. For a moment, Marcus stood completely still. Something in her voice, the quiet certainty, the specific detail, struck him as odd. This wasn't the vague observation of a casual bystander. This was someone who understood machines. But his pride wouldn't allow him to acknowledge it. Instead, his lips curled into a cruel smile. "Is that so? The engine was talking to you?" "Sir, I only meant—" "You know what? I have an idea." Marcus raised his voice so the entire factory could hear. "You're so confident my experts are wrong. You're so certain you know better. So here's your chance to prove it." Maria's face went pale. "1 hour," Marcus continued, his tone mocking. "I'm giving you 60 minutes to fix what 5 PhDs couldn't figure out in 3 weeks. You succeed, I'll—" He paused, relishing the moment. "I'll personally apologize, but when you fail, and you will fail, you're fired. And I'll make sure every factory in Detroit knows about the cleaning woman who thought she was smarter than real engineers." The crowd gasped. Someone whispered, "Jesus, Marcus, that's too far." Maria's coworker, an older man named Roberto, grabbed her arm. "Mari, don't let him do this to you." But Maria stood frozen, staring at the engine. Something flickered in her eyes, not fear but something else. Recognition, determination. Marcus couldn't tell. Finally, she looked up at him. "If I fix it, will you believe me about what I find?" "What you'll find is that you're out of your depth," Marcus sneered. "But sure, fix my engine and I'll listen to whatever fantasy you've concocted. Deal." Maria Santos took a deep breath. Her hands stopped trembling. When she spoke again, her voice was steady. "I'll need basic tools. A torque wrench, sealant, and access to the auxiliary systems." Marcus gestured grandly toward the engine. Be my guest. Everyone clear away. Let's watch the miracle worker perform. As Maria set down her mop and walked toward the tool station, Marcus turned to Victor and whispered, "This is going to be entertaining. 1 hour to publicly humiliate someone who doesn't know their place. Then we get back to real work." But as he watched Maria Santos approach his $8 million engine with unexpected purpose, Marcus Chen had no idea that in 60 minutes, everything he thought he knew about his company and himself was about to shatter. The clock began ticking. The walk to the tool station felt like a death march. Maria Santos could feel 300 pairs of eyes burning into her back, some pitying, some curious, most simply stunned that she'd accepted Marcus Chen's cruel challenge. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened the weathered metal toolbox assigned to maintenance staff. The tools inside were basic, nothing like the sophisticated diagnostic equipment the German engineers had been using. A standard torque wrench, a set of Allen keys, basic sealant, a flashlight that barely worked. "This is insane, Mari," Roberto hissed, appearing beside her. At 63, he'd worked at Titantech longer than anyone. His lined face showed genuine fear. "You have 3 kids. You can't risk your job for this pendejo's ego trip." Maria selected tools with careful precision, testing the weight of each wrench in her palm. "He'll fire me anyway, Roberto. You heard him. If I walk away now, I look weak. He'll find an excuse to get rid of me within a week." "Then let him. You'll find another job. Detroit has." "I'm 52 years old with no high school diploma." Maria's voice was quiet but firm. "How many other jobs do you think are waiting for women like me? I've been invisible here for 15 years. Maybe it's time someone actually sees me." Before Roberto could respond, Marcus's voice boomed across the factory floor. 57 minutes remaining. Should we order pizza while we wait for the miracle?" Laughter rippled through the management team clustered behind him. David Park, the VP of Operations, smirked. "Maybe she'll clean it to death." More laughter. Maria closed the toolbox with a metallic clang and turned toward the QX9000. The massive turbine engine loomed before her like a mechanical god. 20 feet of intricate engineering. Thousands of components. Millions of calculations embedded in its design. And somewhere within that complexity, a whisper only she had heard. "Ms. Santos," a young voice interrupted her thoughts. She turned to find Tom Chen, no relation to Marcus, one of the junior technicians. He was 24, fresh from community college, and one of the few people who'd ever spoken to her like a human being. I believe in you. I've seen you fix things. That conveyor motor last month, that was brilliant." Maria managed a small smile. "Thank you, Mijo, but this is different." "I know, but..." Tom glanced nervously at Marcus before leaning closer. "The auxiliary cooling system. That's where the weird sounds came from, right? I heard it too, 3 days before the shutdown, like a whistle that shouldn't be there." Maria's eyes sharpened. "You heard it?" "Yeah, but when I mentioned it to Dr. Hoffman, he said the auxiliary systems were fine, that they'd already checked them, so I figured I was wrong." Tom's voice dropped to barely a whisper. "But I wasn't wrong, was I?" Before Maria could answer, Marcus's voice cut through again. "Are you two planning to chat all day? 53 minutes, Miss Santos. Though I suppose you're already preparing your excuses for why you couldn't deliver." Maria squared her shoulders. She handed her worn jacket to Tom. "Hold this for me." Then she walked toward the engine. The crowd parted before her like the Red Sea. She could hear their whispered conversations. "Poor woman. Chen's being a real bastard today. She's got guts, I'll give her that. This is painful to watch." Dr. Victor Hoffman stood with his arms crossed, his expression a mixture of pity and professional skepticism. As Maria passed, he spoke quietly, not unkindly. "Ms. Santos, I understand you want to help, but this engine is extraordinarily complex. We've run 17 different diagnostic protocols. Perhaps you saw us perform a repair and thought, "I'm not here to embarrass you, doctor," Maria interrupted gently. "I'm here because I hear what you don't." Victor's eyebrows rose, but he said nothing more. Maria reached the base of the QX9000 and placed her palm flat against the cold metal housing. The surface was smooth, precisely machined, still warm from the morning's failed startup attempts. She closed her eyes. "Papa, if you're watching, I could use some help right now." The memory came flooding back unbidden. She was 8 years old, standing in her father's garage in El Paso. A customer's pickup truck sat with its hood open, and 3 mechanics stood around it, baffled. "Fuel pump," her father said. "We replaced the fuel pump," one mechanic argued. Her father had smiled, patient as always. "You replaced the obvious fuel pump, Carlos, but this truck, it has 2. One primary, one auxiliary that nobody remembers. The auxiliary fails, the primary works too hard, and everything seems wrong." He'd let young Maria crawl under the truck with him, showing her the hidden pump everyone forgot existed. Engines keep secrets, Mija. Most people only look at what's obvious. But the truth hides in the places no one thinks to check. Maria opened her eyes and scanned the QX9000 with renewed focus. The main turbine assembly dominated the center. That's where all the engineers had concentrated their efforts. The primary cooling systems, the ignition chambers, the fuel injection arrays, all the obvious places. But running along the back, barely visible behind the main housing, were the auxiliary systems, the backup coolant lines, the secondary pressure valves, the forgotten redundancies that engineers often overlooked because they rarely failed. "They're looking in the wrong place." 48 minutes, Marcus called out, his tone gleeful. "How's it going, Miss Santos? Found the problem yet?" Maria ignored him. She squeezed between the engine and the back wall, into a narrow maintenance corridor most people forgot existed. It was dim here, cramped. Her knees protested as she crouched down, following the auxiliary coolant line with her flashlight. The beam caught something that made her breath stop. Scratches, fresh metal scratches on a connection valve that should have been untouched for months. Her pulse quickened. She leaned closer, examining the hexagonal valve housing. There, tool marks, recent ones. Someone had been here with an Allen wrench and not for maintenance. The scratches were irregular, hasty, wrong. Maria's mind raced. This wasn't mechanical failure. This was something else entirely. She pulled out her phone, an old model with a cracked screen that her daughter kept threatening to replace, and took several photos, making sure to capture the angles, the tool marks, the suspicious wear patterns. 35 minutes, Marcus's voice echoed. "Should we start preparing your exit interview?" More laughter from the management team. Maria's jaw tightened. She pulled the torque wrench from her belt and carefully began testing the valve's tension. The moment she applied pressure, she felt it. The connection was loose. Not catastrophically loose, but precisely calibrated to fail gradually. Her father's voice echoed in her memory. "When something fails exactly the same way 3 times, Mija, that's not bad luck. That's intention." Someone had sabotaged this engine. Not all at once, slowly, methodically, creating escalating failures that looked like natural mechanical degradation. Brilliant, really. Who would suspect deliberate sabotage when the engine kept almost working? But why and who? Maria's hands moved with practiced efficiency now, her nervousness burned away by the puzzle before her. She photographed everything, documented each discovery. Then she began the repair, tightening, sealing, checking adjacent connections that might have been compromised. The work was delicate. One wrong move and she could make things worse. But her hands remembered skills she'd thought she'd forgotten. Muscle memory from thousands of engines repaired in her father's garage decades ago. 20 minutes, Marcus sounded bored now. This is getting sad. Someone tell me when she gives up so I can get back to actual work. Maria heard footsteps walking away. Marcus was leaving, assuming the show was over. Perfect. She made the final connection, applied sealant to 3 critical junctions and carefully backed out of the maintenance corridor. Her knees ached. Her uniform was smeared with oil and coolant, but in her hands she held evidence that would change everything. Tom appeared beside her. Did you get everyone back? Maria said quietly. Far back. If I'm right about this, the startup is going to be loud. Tom's eyes widened. You fixed it. I fixed the symptom. But Tom, Maria looked at him seriously, the disease is much worse than anyone knows. When this engine starts, I need you to find security immediately. Don't talk to Mr. Chen's management team. Go straight to the head of security. Tell him we have a saboteur. What, Maria, are you sure? 17 minutes, Maria said, moving toward the main control panel. And yes, I'm sure. Now go. As Tom hurried away, Maria reached the startup controls. The German engineers stood nearby, watching with academic curiosity but no real hope. Dr. Hoffman approached. Ms. Santos, you should know that we've attempted 47 startups. Each one has failed within 30 seconds. The safety systems will shut it down automatically if... Stand back, please, Maria said calmly. She placed her hand on the ignition switch. Every eye in the factory was on her now. Even the workers who'd been milling around had stopped to watch. Marcus Chen stood near his office entrance, arms crossed, waiting for her humiliation. Maria thought of her 3 children, of the bills piled on her kitchen table, of 15 years of invisibility, of her father's garage and the smell of motor oil and possibility. She pressed the button. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the QX9000 coughed, sputtered, and with a roar that shook the entire factory floor, it came to life. The sound was glorious, the deep, thrumming power of $8 million of precision engineering doing exactly what it was designed to do. The turbine spun faster, faster, the rhythm building until it reached full operational speed. Perfect, flawless running. The factory floor erupted in chaos. Workers screamed. Some cheered. Others stood frozen in disbelief. The German engineers rushed forward, checking displays, their faces masks of confusion and shock. And across the factory floor, Maria Santos locked eyes with Marcus Chen. His coffee cup slipped from his hand, shattering on the polished floor. The impossible had just happened. And somewhere in the depths of Titantech Industries, a saboteur realized their carefully laid plans had just been destroyed by a 52-year-old cleaning woman with a torque wrench and her father's wisdom. The game had changed. The roar of the QX9000 turbine filled the factory like thunder, but Maria Santos barely heard it. Her ears rang with a different sound, her father's laughter, echoing across 20 years of silence. You did it, Mija, you remembered. Stop. Marcus Chen's voice cut through the celebration. He sprinted across the factory floor, his expensive shoes skidding on the oil-slicked concrete. His face had gone from smug superiority to crimson rage in seconds. Shut it down. Shut it down now. Dr. Hoffman reached the control panel first, his fingers flying over the diagnostic screens. Mr. Chen, the readings are perfect. Temperature optimal, pressure stable, rotation speed exactly within parameters. It's working perfectly. That's impossible, Marcus whirled on Maria, jabbing his finger toward her. You did something. What did you do? Who helped you? Maria stood calmly, her oil-stained hands hanging at her sides. The fear that had gripped her an hour ago had evaporated, replaced by a quiet certainty she hadn't felt in 15 years. Nobody helped me, Mr. Chen. Bullshit, Marcus's face contorted. You're a cleaning woman, you can't just fix an engine. Maria's voice remained steady, but something had shifted in her posture. She stood straighter now, meeting his eyes without flinching. Why not? Because I mop floors, because I empty trash cans. The factory had gone silent except for the turbine's rhythmic hum. 300 workers watched the confrontation with held breath. Victor stepped forward diplomatically. Ms. Santos, please understand our confusion. This engine has defeated our entire team for 3 weeks. If you've truly solved it, we need to understand how. What did you do differently? Maria turned to the German engineer, recognizing genuine curiosity rather than condescension. I didn't look at what was obvious, doctor. I listened to what was hidden. She moved toward the engine, and the crowd parted instinctively. Marcus followed, his management team trailing like uncertain shadows. Maria squeezed back into the narrow maintenance corridor behind the main turbine assembly. Here, she pointed to the auxiliary coolant valve. Someone loosened this connection, not all at once, gradually over weeks, maybe longer. Victor crouched beside her, pulling out a penlight. His expression changed as he examined the valve. Main got, these are tool marks, recent ones. And look at the wear pattern, Maria indicated the metal surface. This wasn't mechanical failure. Someone used a 4mm Allen wrench, applied exactly enough torque to create a slow leak. The coolant loss was minimal, not enough to trigger immediate alarms, but enough to cause thermal expansion in the main housing. That's what created your cascading failures. Marcus pushed forward, staring at the valve. You're saying someone deliberately sabotaged my engine? Yes, sir. Maria pulled out her phone, showing him the photos she'd taken. The scratches are fresh, maybe 3-4 weeks old. This was done by someone with access and knowledge. For the first time since she'd known him, Marcus Chen looked genuinely shaken. But who would? That's not my department, Maria said quietly. But you asked what I did differently. I fixed this valve, sealed 3 related junctions, and cleared the thermal sensors. Your engine is fine now. But Mr. Chen, she looked at him directly. Someone wants your company to fail, and they're still here. The implications hung in the air like poison gas. David Park, the VP of Operations, laughed nervously. This is absurd. You're suggesting corporate espionage based on some scratches. Maybe maintenance crews were. Maintenance hasn't touched this valve in 8 months, Tom Chen interrupted, arriving breathless with a tablet. I checked the logs. Nobody's been authorized to access the auxiliary system since March. Marcus's jaw clenched. Get James Rodriguez, head of security, now. As workers scattered to follow orders, Maria felt the adrenaline finally starting to fade. Her knees wobbled slightly. The magnitude of what she'd just done, and what she'd accused, began sinking in. Victor was still examining the valve, his professional fascination overriding everything else. Ms. Santos, your diagnostic skills are remarkable. Where did you receive your training? The question hung in the air. Maria looked at the German engineer's genuinely curious face, then at the crowd of coworkers who'd known her for years but never really seen her. My father's garage, she said simply. El Paso, Texas, Santos Auto Repair. You're formally trained as a mechanic. No formal training, just life. The memories crashed over her like a wave. Age 7, tiny hands passing her father wrenches, learning the names of tools before she could write sentences. Socket wrench, Papa. Good, Mija. Now the 3/8 drive. The garage smelled like oil and possibility. Age 10, rebuilding her first carburetor, her father's patient voice guiding her. Feel the spring tension. Too tight and it chokes. Too loose and it floods. Engines are like people, Mija. They need balance. Age 12, diagnosing a failing transmission by sound alone while her father beamed with pride. The customer couldn't believe it. Your daughter did this. My daughter is better than me, Papa had said. Age 15, dreaming of MIT, of Stanford, of engineering degrees and laboratories. Her guidance counselor had smiled sadly. Maria, be realistic. Your family can't afford. Age 17, her father's funeral. Heart attack at 51. The garage sold to pay medical bills. Her college fund evaporated. Her mother crying in Spanish, saying they'd survive somehow. Age 18. Pregnant. The boyfriend gone before she showed. Her mother's disappointed eyes. Dreams of engineering replaced by dreams of survival. Age 23. 3 children. 2 jobs. Night shifts cleaning offices while her mother watched the kids. Bills piled on the kitchen table like accusations. Age 37. Finally landing the Titan Tech job. Better pay, benefits, her mother's relief. You're safe now, Mija. But safety meant invisibility. Safety meant swallowing her knowledge, her skills, her father's legacy, because nobody asks cleaning women about engines. Maria blinked, realizing Victor was still waiting for an answer. My father was a mechanic, she said, her voice thick with emotion she couldn't quite hide. Jose Santos, best in El Paso, people said. He taught me everything, how to listen to engines, how they communicate through sound and vibration, how every machine has a personality, a rhythm. When something's wrong, they tell you, but you have to pay attention. And you've been working here how long? Victor asked. 15 years. Doing what? Cleaning, mopping floors, emptying trash. Maria met his eyes. Because when you're a woman with no degree, no certification, and 3 kids to feed, you take whatever work pays the bills. You don't volunteer that you can rebuild a V8 engine blindfolded. The truth of it settled over the crowd like snow. How many others stood among them, their talents buried beneath job titles and assumptions? Tom spoke up suddenly. She's helped me before. Last year the hydraulic press was misfiring. Maintenance couldn't figure it out. Maria fixed it during her lunch break. Didn't tell anyone because, he looked embarrassed. Because I was afraid management would think I was incompetent for needing a cleaning woman's help. The conveyor system too, another voice called out. Maria recognized Lewis from packaging. Remember last March, 3 days down, Maria spotted the timing belt issue in 5 minutes. My truck, Roberto added, wouldn't start. Shop wanted $800 for a new starter. Maria diagnosed it as a corroded battery terminal, cost me $12. One by one, workers began sharing stories. A constellation of quiet repairs, unacknowledged expertise, invisible competence that had existed right under management's nose for 15 years. Marcus Chen stood frozen, his worldview cracking like thin ice. James Rodriguez, the head of security, arrived with 2 guards. He was a barrel-chested man in his 50s with a military bearing. Mr. Chen, what's the emergency? Marcus pointed at the engine. Someone sabotaged the QX9000. Deliberate, professional work. Ms. Santos discovered it. James's eyes widened. He moved immediately to examine the valve, pulling out his own camera to document everything. His face went through several expressions: confusion, anger, and then something that looked like dawning horror. Sir, James said quietly, these tool marks, I recognize the pattern. There's only 3 people in this facility with that specific Allen wrench set. Its custom German tooling came with the engine installation. Who? Marcus demanded. James's voice dropped to barely audible. You, Dr. Hoffman, and... He paused, his face going pale. My nephew, Derek Morrison, junior technician. He was part of the installation crew. The silence that followed was deafening. Derek, Marcus's voice was sharp. Your nephew Derek. He has access, James said, sounding sick. He has the tools and... He pulled out his phone, scrolling rapidly. Jesus Christ, sir, 3 weeks ago Derek deposited $47,000 in his bank account. I only know because he asked me for investment advice. Said he won it gambling. Find him, Marcus ordered, now. As security scattered, Maria quietly picked up her mop from where she'd left it an hour ago. Her hands were shaking now, the adrenaline finally crashing. She'd fixed the engine. She'd exposed a saboteur. She'd revealed herself after 15 years of hiding. And she had absolutely no idea what happened next. Derek Morrison's workstation was empty. James Rodriguez stood before the abandoned desk, his face ashen. Personal items remained: a coffee mug, family photos, a jacket draped over the chair, but Derek himself had vanished. His car's gone from the lot, one of the security guards reported, breathless from running. Left approximately 40 minutes ago, right after the engine started. Marcus Chen's fists clenched. He knew. The moment that turbine came to life, he knew he was caught. They stood in the technician's office, a glass-walled room overlooking the factory floor. Below, the QX9000 hummed with perfect mechanical precision, while workers slowly returned to their stations, still buzzing with shock and confusion. Maria had been escorted to the office despite her protests. She sat uncomfortably in a leather chair that probably cost more than her monthly rent, acutely aware of the oil stains on her uniform and the eyes of executives upon her. James was methodically searching Derek's desk, pulling open drawers with barely controlled fury. "I vouched for him, got him this job, told you he was trustworthy." His voice cracked. "My sister's kid. I've known him since he was in diapers." "People change," Victor offered quietly. The German engineer sat nearby, his tablet displaying the photos Maria had taken. "Or perhaps we never knew them as well as we thought." "Found something," one of the security guards called out. He held up a tablet retrieved from Derek's locked drawer. "Password protected, but there's a post-it note stuck underneath with Jesus with the password written on it. Titan 2024. "Smart kid," Marcus muttered sarcastically. The guard worked quickly, his fingers flying across the screen. His expression darkened with each passing second. "Sir, you need to see this. Email correspondence dating back 4 months. The sender is," he looked up, "Richard Chen, VP of Operations at Comtech Industries." The room went silent. Comtech was TitanTech's primary competitor, a Detroit rival that had been losing market share for 3 years straight. Marcus had crushed them in bid after bid, stolen their clients, poached their engineers. The rivalry was legendary in the industry. "Let me see that." Marcus snatched the tablet. His eyes scanned the emails, his face transitioning from anger to cold fury. They were paying him, $50,000 deposited across multiple transactions. Instructions on exactly how to sabotage the QX9000, make it look like mechanical failure, cause delays, he read aloud. "The AutoNation contract is critical. If TitanTech can't deliver, they'll come to us. Take your time, make it hurt." James collapsed into a chair, his head in his hands. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Chen. This is my fault. I brought him here. "You didn't know," Maria said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. She met James's eyes with unexpected compassion. "Family betrayal is the worst kind. You trusted him because you loved him. That's not a weakness." James looked at her gratefully, but before he could respond, Marcus threw the tablet onto the desk with a clatter. "Call the FBI, corporate espionage, industrial sabotage. I want every charge possible, and get me my lawyers. Comtech is going to wish they'd never." "Mr. Chen," Maria interrupted softly, "there's something else you should know." Marcus spun toward her, eyebrows raised. The authority in her voice, quiet but unmistakable, seemed to surprise him. Maria stood, moving to Derek's desk. She picked up a framed photo of Derek with another young man, both wearing Comtech company badges at what looked like a corporate picnic. "This photo is dated last summer. Derek was working at Comtech before he came here." Victor leaned forward. He was a plant from the beginning. "Maybe," Maria said, "or maybe they recruited him after he started. Either way." She turned the frame over, carefully prying off the backing. A small folded paper fell out. She opened it, her expression darkening. "It's a diagram. Detailed schematic of the QX9000's auxiliary systems with specific weak points marked." She spread the paper on the desk. Red circles highlighted exactly where Derek had been instructed to cause damage. Notes in cramped handwriting detailed timing. Week 1. Loosen valve tomb. Week 3. Form. Week 5, 6. Create escalating failures. This was planned months in advance, James said, his voice hollow. He studied this engine specifically to destroy it. Marcus stared at the schematic, and Maria watched something shift in his expression. The arrogant CEO who'd mocked her an hour ago was confronting a reality where his judgment, his instincts about people, had failed catastrophically. "How did I miss this?" Marcus said quietly, almost to himself. "I hired 5 German engineers, spent 3 weeks and hundreds of thousands of dollars, and I missed what was right in front of me." "Because you were looking at the obvious," Maria said. "Big problems seem like they need big solutions. You assumed a catastrophic failure needed a catastrophic cause, but sometimes," she touched the schematic gently, "sometimes the biggest disasters come from the smallest betrayals." Victor nodded slowly. "She's right. We ran every major diagnostic, tested every primary system. We never even considered the auxiliary coolant line because it's redundant. Theoretically, the engine should run even if it fails completely." "Should but doesn't," Maria added. "Because this engine is so finely tuned, so perfectly balanced, that even a small thermal irregularity cascades into total system failure. Derek knew that. Comptech knew that. They found the one vulnerability nobody was protecting." The security guard was still scrolling through the tablet. "There's more here. Text messages between Derek and someone named R.C., probably Richard Chen. They're discussing the timeline, panicking about the German engineers being brought in. And then," he paused, "3 days ago there's a message. They're bringing in more consultants. Need to escalate, make the next failure catastrophic. Unfixable." Maria felt ice slide down her spine. Unfixable. "He was going to destroy the engine permanently," James said, understanding dawning. "Not just disable it, destroy it beyond repair." "When?" Marcus demanded. The guard checked the messages. "Tonight, 11 p.m. He has building access for the night shift. The plan was to introduce corrosive chemicals into the coolant system during the midnight maintenance window. By morning, the entire turbine housing would be eaten away. Millions in damage, months of delays." The room went silent as the implications sank in. "If Ms. Santos hadn't fixed the engine today," Victor said slowly. "Derek would have had his opportunity tonight," Marcus finished. "We'd have lost everything. The AutoNation contract, our reputation, possibly the entire company." Everyone turned to look at Maria. She stood there in her stained uniform. This woman they'd all overlooked for 15 years, who just saved Titan Tech Industries from deliberate destruction by noticing what no one else had heard. "Maria," Marcus said, and for the first time his voice held no mockery, no condescension, just raw, honest shock. "You didn't just fix my engine, you saved my company." Maria shrugged uncomfortably. "I just listen to machines, Mr. Chen. They tell you their secrets if you pay attention." "No," James said firmly, standing up. "You did more than that. You saw what trained engineers missed. You trusted your instincts when everyone told you to stay in your place, and you documented everything carefully enough to give us the evidence we needed." He looked at Marcus. "Sir, if she hadn't taken those photos, if she hadn't preserved the proof, Derek could have claimed he was being framed." Marcus nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. Then he pulled out his phone. "Jennifer, clear my afternoon. Contact the FBI Detroit field office. Tell them we need agents here within the hour for industrial espionage. Also," he paused, "cancel all my afternoon meetings, everything." He ended the call and looked directly at Maria. "Ms. Santos, I owe you an apology. Actually, I owe you several apologies. But first I need you to tell me everything, every detail you noticed, every instinct you followed. Because clearly I've been running this company blind." Maria glanced at the clock on the wall. Mr. Chen, my shift ends in 20 minutes. I need to pick up my daughter from. I'll pay you for overtime, Marcus interrupted. Double rate, triple rate, whatever it takes, because right now you're the only person in this building I can trust to tell me the truth. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The CEO of a multi-million-dollar company, surrounded by executives and experts, turning to a cleaning woman for answers. Outside the glass walls, workers had begun cheering as word spread about the sabotage being discovered. Someone had started a chant, Maria, Maria. Maria closed her eyes briefly, overwhelmed. 15 years of invisibility shattered in a single hour. When she opened them again, she made a decision. Okay, Mr. Chen, I'll tell you everything, but I have one condition. Marcus's eyebrows rose. Name it. When the FBI gets here and starts asking questions, I want Derek treated fairly. Yes, he betrayed you, but Comptech manipulated him. They exploited his ambition, probably his financial struggles. He made terrible choices, but she thought of her own children, of the desperate things poverty makes people consider. He deserves justice, not revenge. The room was silent. Then Marcus nodded slowly. Agreed. Now sit down, Miss Santos, and please, for the love of God, tell me how you knew. Maria sat. And she began to speak. The FBI arrived in force. 3 black SUVs pulled into Titan Tech's parking lot at 2:47 p.m., disgorging 6 agents in navy windbreakers emblazoned with bright yellow letters. Lead agent Sarah Mitchell was a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s who listened to Marcus's explanation with the patience of someone who'd heard 1,000 corporate sob stories. But when she reviewed Derek's tablet, her expression changed. This is more than simple sabotage, she said, scrolling through the emails. This is a coordinated conspiracy involving interstate commerce, wire fraud, and industrial espionage. Mr. Chen, you're looking at federal charges that could put multiple people away for years. Marcus sat across from her in the conference room, his earlier bravado completely deflated. Maria sat beside him, at his insistence, while Victor and James hovered nearby. The leather chairs and mahogany table that usually made Marcus feel powerful now seemed absurdly pretentious. Derek Morrison is in the wind, Agent Mitchell continued. Left his apartment, hasn't contacted family, but we've frozen his accounts and issued warrants. He won't get far. She looked up. What I need from you, Mr. Chen, is the woman who discovered this, Ms. Santos. Maria straightened in her chair, suddenly nervous again. Yes, ma'am. Walk me through it, every detail. What made you look at the auxiliary systems when trained engineers were focused elsewhere? Maria took a breath and began explaining. Her voice was quiet but steady, describing the sound change 3 days before the shutdown, the pattern of escalating failures, the intuition that led her to the hidden valve. Agent Mitchell took meticulous notes, occasionally asking clarifying questions. As Maria spoke, Marcus found himself really listening to her for the first time, not as background noise, not as someone beneath his notice, but as a person with depth, experience, and hard-won wisdom. He remembered his words from just hours ago. You're a cleaning woman. You can't just fix an engine. The memory made him physically ill. Ms. Santos, Agent Mitchell said when Maria finished, your documentation is excellent. These photos will be crucial evidence. The timestamps prove Derek had access during the damage period and your technical analysis. She glanced at her notes. Frankly, it's better than most expert witnesses I work with. Maria flushed. I just took pictures of what I saw. You preserved a crime scene and provided expert testimony. Mitchell smiled slightly. Don't undersell yourself. Before Maria could respond, one of the other agents burst into the room. We got him. Ohio State Highway Patrol pulled Morrison over near Toledo. He was heading for Canada. Bring him back, Mitchell ordered. Federal detention, no bail. As the agent left, she turned back to Marcus. Mr. Chen will need complete access to your facility, employee records, and financial systems, and will be investigating Comtech Industries. If their VP of operations is involved in industrial espionage, this goes all the way to their C-suite. Marcus nodded numbly. Whatever you need. Good, we'll set up here for the next several days. Ms. Santos, I'll need you available for additional questioning. You're our star witness. After Agent Mitchell left to coordinate with her team, an uncomfortable silence filled the conference room. Marcus stared at his hands, manicured, soft hands that had never held a wrench in anger. He'd built his fortune on intelligence and ruthlessness, on being smarter and more aggressive than everyone around him. His immigrant parents had taught him that weakness was death in America, that sentiment was for people who could afford it. But sitting here, watching Maria Santos, a woman he'd tried to humiliate in front of 300 people, calmly provide expert testimony to federal agents, something cracked inside him. "I was going to fire you," he said suddenly. Maria looked at him, surprised by the admission. "When you failed and I was so certain you would fail, I was going to make a spectacle of it. Fire you publicly. Make an example." Marcus's voice was hollow. "I wanted everyone to see what happens when people forget their place." "Mr. Chen," Victor started. "No, let me finish." Marcus looked directly at Maria. "My father came to this country with $200 and an engineering degree nobody recognized. He washed dishes for 3 years before anyone would hire him as an engineer. He told me stories about being invisible, about people assuming he was stupid because of his accent." Marcus's jaw tightened. "He taught me to fight, to never show weakness, to crush anyone who disrespected me." "So you became what hurt him," Maria said softly. The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. "What?" "Someone made your father invisible because of his job, his accent. So you learned to make others invisible, anyone you thought was beneath you." Maria's eyes held no anger, only understanding. Hurt people, Mr. Chen. It's a cycle." Marcus felt something hot behind his eyes. When was the last time he'd cried? His father's funeral 7 years ago. He blinked rapidly. "I called you the cleaning lady like it was an insult," he said. "Like your job defined your worth, like you couldn't possibly have value beyond pushing a mop." He laughed bitterly. "Meanwhile, you were more observant than my 5 PhDs combined. You saved my company, and I tried to destroy you for sport." "You were scared," Maria said simply. "The engine failing, the contract deadline, everything slipping away. Scared people lash out. I've been scared for 15 years, Mr. Chen. I know what it looks like." The compassion in her voice was almost worse than anger would have been. James cleared his throat. "Sir, if I may, this isn't just about Ms. Santos. How many other people in this building have skills we've never bothered to discover? How many Marias are mopping floors or working assembly lines because we decided their potential based on their job title?" Victor nodded. "In Germany, we have apprenticeship programs. We recognize that talent exists everywhere, not just in universities. Perhaps," he gestured vaguely, "perhaps we've been looking at human resources the same way we looked at that engine, only at the obvious parts." Marcus stood abruptly, packing to the window. Below, he could see the factory floor where workers moved between stations. How many of them had he walked past without really seeing? How many had talents, dreams, stories he'd never bothered to learn? His phone buzzed. A text from David Park, his VP of Operations. "Media's outside. WSJ, Detroit News, Reuters, they want statement about the sabotage. What should I tell them?" Marcus looked back at Maria, who sat quietly in her oil-stained uniform, looking exhausted and overwhelmed. "Tell them we'll have a press conference tomorrow," Marcus typed back, "and Maria Santos will be standing beside me." He saw Maria's eyes widen as she read his screen. "Mr. Chen, I can't. I'm not good with cameras or—" You don't have to say anything if you don't want to, Marcus interrupted. But the world needs to see you. The woman who saved Titan Tech. The woman I tried to humiliate. The woman who was better than all of us. He paused. The woman who's going to help me rebuild this company the right way. What do you mean? Maria asked warily. Marcus turned to face her fully. I mean, I'm offering you a job. A real job, not cleaning, engineering, diagnostics. I don't care what title we give you, we'll create one if necessary. And before you tell me you're not qualified, he held up his hand. You're the most qualified person in this building. You proved that today. Maria shook her head. Mr. Chen, I told you, I don't have a high school diploma, no certifications, no formal training. The moment someone checks my credentials. Then we get you credentials, Marcus said firmly. GED programs, night classes, engineering certifications, whatever you need. Titan Tech will pay for everything. Sir, James interjected carefully. The board will ask questions. Ms. Santos is right. Without formal qualifications, there could be liability issues, insurance complications. Then we hire her as a consultant, Marcus said. Contractor, whatever works legally, but I'm not letting her walk out of here and go back to mopping floors, not after this. He looked at Maria intently. You're too valuable, not to the company, to yourself. You've been hiding for 15 years. No more hiding. Maria stood slowly, her legs unsteady. Mr. Chen, Marcus, this is too much, too fast. 6 hours ago you were humiliating me. Now you're offering me a career. I need time to think. I need to talk to my children. I need to go home, Marcus finished. You're right, I'm sorry, again. He ran his hand through his hair. I'm not good at this. The humility thing, the admitting I was wrong thing. Despite everything, Maria smiled slightly. I noticed. Go home, Marcus said. Take tomorrow off, paid. Spend time with your family, think about what you want, but Maria, he met her eyes. Whatever you decide, thank you. You saved 300 jobs today, mine included. And you taught me something I should have learned from my father's stories. Never assume you know someone's value by their title. Maria gathered her things, her old jacket, her cracked phone. As she reached the door, she paused. Mr. Chen, that press conference tomorrow, I'll be there, but only if you promise me something. Anything. Tell the truth, all of it, including how you treated me, including your prejudices, including what you learned. She looked back at him. Real change doesn't come from hiding mistakes, it comes from owning them. And with that, Maria Santos walked out, leaving Marcus Chen alone with the wreckage of his ego and the first genuine chance at redemption he'd had in years. Maria's hands shook as she turned the key in her apartment door. The small 2-bedroom unit in Detroit's East Side had been home for 8 years, the longest she'd lived anywhere. Faded wallpaper, creaking floors, but it was hers. Safe, predictable. Today had shattered predictable into a million pieces. Mama, her youngest daughter, Sophia, rushed from the kitchen. At 19, she was in her second year at community college studying nursing. Mama, oh my God, are you okay? Roberto called. He said you fixed the big engine. He said Mr. Chen tried to fire you, he said. Mija, breathe. Maria set down her bag and pulled Sophia into a hug. Her daughter smelled like the vanilla perfume Maria bought her last Christmas, the expensive kind, a rare splurge. I'm fine, I'm here. Everything is fine. Fine, Mama, people are calling you a hero. Maria pulled back, confused. What people? Sophia grabbed her phone, her fingers flying across the screen. It's everywhere, look. Maria stared at the glowing screen. A shaky cell phone video showed her standing beside the QX9000, explaining the valve problem to FBI agents. Someone had filmed through the conference room window. The video had been posted 20 minutes ago. It already had 47,000 views. The caption read, Cleaning Woman SAVES Auto Company and EXPOSES Corporate Spy. When engineers couldn't fix a $8 M engine, Maria Santos did it in under an hour. Then she discovered sabotage. This is what real expertise looks like. Maria the engineer respect all workers. No, Maria whispered. No, no, no. But Sophia was scrolling through comments, reading them aloud. This woman is a legend. Give her the CEO job. I'm crying, this is beautiful. Finally someone recognizing working-class brilliance. Sophia looked up, her eyes shining. Mama, you're trending on Twitter and Instagram and TikTok. Maria sank onto the worn couch, her head spinning. Who posted this? Some worker at the factory, but Mama, that's not all. Sophia sat beside her, pulling up a news website. Detroit News picked it up, and the Free Press. Look, local woman's mechanical genius saves manufacturing giant. They're calling you an unlikely hero. Unlikely, Maria repeated bitterly, because cleaning women can't possibly know things. That's not what they mean. Yes, it is, Mija. Maria closed her eyes. It's exactly what they mean. The apartment door burst open. Maria's oldest daughter, Carmen, swept in like a hurricane. At 26, she was a nursing supervisor at Detroit Medical Center, tough, brilliant, and fiercely protective. She took one look at her mother and crossed her arms. Okay, tell me everything. And I mean everything. Because I just spent my entire lunch break watching my mother become a viral sensation and having a minor panic attack. Over the next hour, Maria explained. The engine failure, Marcus's cruel dare, the discovery of sabotage, the FBI, the job offer. Her daughters listened with expressions cycling between fury at Marcus, pride in their mother, and shock at the magnitude of it all. He tried to fire you, Carmen's voice could have cut steel. In front of everyone. Mama, that's workplace harassment. You could sue, you should sue. I'm not suing anyone, Maria said tiredly. But he humiliated you. And then he learned better. People can change, Carmen. Can they? Carmen wasn't convinced. Or is he just covering his ass because you made him look bad? It was a fair question. Maria had wondered the same thing. Her phone rang, an unknown Detroit number. She hesitated, then answered. Ms. Santos, this is Jennifer Wu from the Detroit Free Press. I'm doing a feature story on. Maria hung up. The phone rang again immediately. Different number. She let it go to voicemail. It's going to be like this, isn't it? Maria said to no one in particular. Reporters, questions, people wanting to interview the cleaning lady who saved the day. Sophia squeezed her mother's hand. Mama, is that so bad? You did save the day. You've been invisible for 15 years. Maybe it's time people saw you. But I don't want to be seen like this, as some feel-good story. Poor immigrant woman pulls herself up by her bootstraps. That's not who I am. Then who are you? Carmen asked, her tone softer now. Maria looked at her daughters, the children she'd raised alone, working 2 jobs, sacrificing her own dreams so they could have theirs. Carmen, the nurse. Sophia studying to follow in her sister's footsteps. Her middle child, Miguel, serving in the army overseas. I'm your mother, Maria said simply. That's what matters. Her phone buzzed with a text. Roberto, Mari, you need to see this. Channel 7 is outside Titan Tech. They're interviewing workers. Sophia found the live stream on her laptop. A reporter stood outside the factory gates, microphone in hand, speaking with a cluster of Titan Tech employees. Incredible story of hidden talent, the reporter was saying. We're here with workers who say Maria Santos has been helping people for years. Sir, you work with Ms. Santos. The camera panned to Louis from packaging. He looked uncomfortable but determined. Maria fixed my station 3 months ago. The conveyor kept jamming. Maintenance said it would take 2 days to get parts. Maria looked at it for 5 minutes, realized the sensor was miscalibrated, fixed it with a screwdriver and some electrical tape. Took her 10 minutes. Another worker stepped forward, Jenny from quality control. Last year my car died in the parking lot, dead alternator. I was going to call a tow truck. Maria popped the hood, diagnosed it immediately, and called her cousin who owns a repair shop. Got me a discount. Saved me $400. She tutored my son in math, another voice called out. During lunch breaks, he was failing algebra. Maria taught him better than his teacher did. He got a B+. One by one, workers shared stories. Maria sat frozen on her couch, watching her secret life unveiled on live television. I didn't know people noticed, she whispered. Mama, Carmen said, her voice thick with emotion. You've been helping everyone around you for 15 years. Of course they noticed. They just didn't know how to thank you because, she paused. Because you were invisible to management, but you were never invisible to them. The reporter was wrapping up. An extraordinary picture emerges of a woman whose talents have been overlooked by those in power but cherished by those who work beside her. Maria Santos, a name Detroit won't soon forget. Maria's phone exploded with notifications, text messages from coworkers, Facebook friend requests from people she'd never met, LinkedIn invitations, an email from the mayor's office requesting a meeting. Make it stop, Maria said quietly. Please make it stop. But even as she said it, she knew it wouldn't stop. The story was too perfect, too viral, too emblematic of everything wrong with how society values, or devalues, working people. Sophia's phone rang. She answered, listened, then her eyes went wide. Mama, it's Ellen Chen. She says she's a producer for 60 Minutes. They want to interview you. Maria stood abruptly. I'm going to bed. Don't answer any more calls. Don't talk to any reporters. I need to think. She retreated to her small bedroom, closing the door against the chaos. But sleep wouldn't come. Instead, memories flooded back. 15 years of invisible labor, of swallowed knowledge, of making herself small so others could feel big. And now, suddenly, everyone wanted to make her large. Her father's voice echoed in her memory. Mija, when people finally see you, make sure they see the truth. Not their fantasy, not their guilt, the truth of who you are. But who was she? A cleaning woman, an engineer, a mother, a hero, a cautionary tale. At 11 p.m., her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus Chen. I meant what I said. Whatever you decide, you have a place here, not as inspiration porn for the media. As an engineer, as an equal, think about it, please. Maria stared at the message for a long time. Then she turned off her phone, pulled the blanket over her head, and waited for the impossible day to finally end. Outside her window, news vans were already gathering on her street. The revelation had just begun. Morning arrived with the sound of chaos. Maria woke at 5 a.m., her body clock still set to her cleaning shift, and peeked through the bedroom curtains. At least a dozen news vans lined her quiet street. Reporters clutched coffee cups, waiting. Cameras were already rolling, capturing B-roll of her humble apartment building. Her neighbors would hate her. Mama, Sophia knocked softly. There's someone at the door, says his name is Marcus Chen. Maria's heart lurched. She looked down at her pajamas, faded flannel pants, and a free t-shirt from Miguel's high school graduation. Tell him I need 10 minutes. She dressed quickly in her best clothes, a simple navy dress she wore to church, her good shoes. When she opened the bedroom door, she found Marcus Chen standing awkwardly in her small living room, looking profoundly out of place among her second-hand furniture and family photos. He wore jeans. Marcus Chen, CEO of Titan Tech, was wearing jeans and a plain button-down shirt. No designer labels visible. His hair was slightly messy and dark circles shadowed his eyes. I'm sorry for coming to your home, he said immediately, but I couldn't reach you by phone and he gestured helplessly at the window. I figured I could at least run interference with the reporters. How did you get past them? Carmen asked suspiciously from the kitchen doorway. I told them I was your attorney coming to discuss representation. Marcus smiled weakly. They backed off fast. Nobody wants to interview a lawyer. Despite everything, Maria felt a small smile tug at her lips. Clever. Miss Santos, Maria, can we talk privately? Maria nodded toward the small balcony. It overlooked the parking lot, but it was away from her daughter's protective ears. They stepped outside into the cool morning air. Marcus leaned against the railing, studying the view: chain-link fences, dumpsters, cracked asphalt. Nothing like the world he inhabited. I couldn't sleep, he admitted, kept replaying yesterday, every cruel word, every assumption, every time I walked past you in the hallway and didn't bother to say hello. He turned to face her. Maria, I've been CEO for 6 years. In that time, how many conversations did we have? None, Maria said quietly, until yesterday. None, 6 years. You were part of the scenery, Marcus's voice cracked. And yesterday, when you were trying to tell me something important, my first instinct was to mock you, to humiliate you, to put you back in your place. He paused. Except you were never in your place. I put you there with my prejudice. Mr. Chen. Marcus, please. After everything, I think we're past formalities. Maria nodded. Marcus, why are you really here? He pulled an envelope from his pocket. This is a formal offer letter, not just a job, a complete package. Chief Diagnostic Engineer, $180,000 annual salary, full benefits, and this. He pulled out a second document. A scholarship fund in your name, $500,000 to start, for employees without traditional credentials who want to pursue education. GED programs, trade schools, community college, 4-year degrees, whatever they need. Maria's breath caught. $500,000. It's the bare minimum to start. Marcus handed her the papers. But there are conditions, your conditions. You said people like you need opportunities. Help me create them. Join my leadership team, not as a token, not as inspiration, as someone who understands what's been broken and knows how to fix it. I can't lead engineers, Marcus. I don't have the credentials. They'll never respect. They'll respect what you can do, Marcus interrupted. Victor already does. He spent 3 hours last night redesigning our entire maintenance protocol based on your approach. He called you the most intuitive diagnostic specialist he's ever met. Maria stared at the papers in her hands, the numbers blurred. This is too much, too fast. I know, but Maria, the board meets tomorrow. They want to fire me. Her head snapped up. What? Marcus laughed bitterly. Oh yes, the CEO who missed obvious sabotage, who publicly humiliated an employee, who nearly lost a $50 million contract. The board wants my head. My only leverage is that I found the solution, you. If you join me, if we present this together as a new direction for Titan Tech, I might survive. If you don't, he shrugged. I'm finished. So this is about saving your job. Partly, Marcus admitted, but it's also about doing what's right. I can't undo yesterday. I can't take back 15 years of walking past you like you were invisible, but I can change tomorrow. We can change tomorrow, together. Maria looked through the sliding door at her daughters, who were pretending not to watch. Carmen, who'd fought her way through nursing school. Sophia, who worked 2 jobs while taking classes. They'd learned resilience from her, learned to survive when the world didn't make space for them. But survival wasn't enough anymore. I have conditions, Maria said finally. Marcus straightened. Name them. First, I start at $120,000, not $180,000. The difference goes into the scholarship fund. Workers will trust it more if I'm not getting rich while they struggle. Marcus blinked, surprised. That's extremely noble, but... Second, I enroll in formal engineering courses. Night school. I want legitimate credentials, not just recognition for experience. I'll earn people's respect properly. Agreed, we'll pay for everything. Third, the scholarship fund isn't just for Titan Tech employees. It's for any working person in Detroit who's been overlooked. Single parents, immigrants, people with records, anyone who has talent but not opportunity. Marcus nodded slowly. That's ambitious and expensive. Fourth, you don't hide what happened. Tomorrow's press conference. You tell the truth, all of it. The sabotage, yes, but also your prejudice, your assumptions, what you learned. Real accountability, not corporate PR spin. Maria, my lawyers will have a heart attack if I. Fifth and final condition. Maria met his eyes. You create a worker advisory board. Real hourly employees with real input on company decisions. Not token representation, actual power. Because Marcus, I can't be the only voice for 300 workers. Others need to be heard too. The balcony fell silent, except for distant traffic and morning birds. Marcus studied her face for a long moment. Then he extended his hand. You drive a hard bargain, Miss Santos. I learned from the best, Maria said, shaking his hand. 15 years of watching you negotiate. He laughed, a genuine sound. When do you start? Today, but first we face those reporters together. You talk about your mistakes. I talk about second chances. We show Detroit what change actually looks like. They're going to eat me alive. Probably, Maria agreed. But you'll survive, and maybe you'll become the leader you should have been all along. They returned inside. Carmen immediately cornered her mother. Mama, are you sure about this? He tried to destroy you yesterday. And today he's trying to build something better, Maria replied. People deserve chances to grow, Mija, even rich CEOs. Sophia hugged her mother tightly. I'm so proud of you. Papa would be so proud. Maria felt tears prick her eyes. Help me get ready. We have a press conference. An hour later, Maria Santos and Marcus Chen stood on the steps of Titan Tech Industries before 24 cameras. Maria wore her church dress. Marcus wore his humility. And together, they told Detroit a story about failure, learning, and the revolutionary idea that everyone, regardless of their job title, deserves to be seen. The media coverage that followed would spark a national conversation about worker dignity, hidden talent, and corporate responsibility. But that morning, on those steps, it was simply two people admitting they'd been wrong about each other and choosing to build something better. The choice had been made. Now came the work. Maria Santos stood in the executive parking lot at 6:45 a.m., coffee in hand, watching the sunrise paint Detroit's skyline in shades of amber and rose. 6 months ago, she'd parked 3 blocks away because executive spaces were forbidden territory. 6 months ago, she'd entered through the service entrance because the main doors felt too presumptuous. 6 months ago, she'd been invisible. Now her badge read, Chief Diagnostic Engineer Worker Innovation Program. The title still felt surreal. Morning, Maria. Tom Chen jogged up, his breath misting in the cold air. He'd been promoted to her department, Diagnostic Innovation, and had proven invaluable. Ready for the AutoNation inspection. Ready as we'll ever be, Maria replied. AutoNation executives were touring the facility today, finalizing their expanded $75 million contract. The original $50 million deal had grown after Titan Tech's production efficiency increased by 31% under Maria's new maintenance protocols. They walked through the main entrance together. The lobby had changed. Where corporate portraits once dominated, now there were photos of workers, all workers. Louis from packaging, demonstrating his efficiency innovation. Jenny from quality control, explaining her statistical analysis method. Roberto, teaching his welding technique to apprentices. And yes, there was Maria's photo too, but she wasn't alone. She'd insisted on that. The factory floor hummed with purposeful energy. The QX9000 turbine, the engine that had changed everything, ran flawlessly, its rhythm as familiar to Maria now as her own heartbeat. But surrounding it were smaller victories, machinery running smoother, downtime reduced by 47%, worker injuries down 60% because people finally felt empowered to report problems. Maria, Victor hurried over, his tablet glowing with data. The new thermal monitoring system you suggested. It just predicted a potential failure in assembly line 3. We caught it 2 days before it would have become critical. That's the 4th time this month. Maria smiled. Her listen to the machine's philosophy had been systematized. Sensors now monitored the subtle changes she'd always heard by instinct, combined with worker observations. Because she'd insisted frontline employees knew their equipment best, TitanTech had transformed from reactive to predictive maintenance. "How's the apprenticeship program?" Maria asked. 12 candidates enrolled this month, Victor replied enthusiastically. 2 from housekeeping, 3 from assembly, 4 from the loading dock. We're teaching them diagnostic engineering while they work toward their certifications. He grinned. Your idea of combining practical and academic learning, revolutionary, and the workers trust it because you walked the path first. Maria was indeed walking that path. 3 nights a week, she attended classes at Wayne State University, pursuing her engineering degree. At 52, she was the oldest student in most classes and frequently the most knowledgeable. Professors had learned to respect her practical expertise even as she absorbed their theoretical frameworks. Her daughters had thrown her a surprise party when she passed her GED with a 98% score. Ms. Santos, a young woman approached hesitantly. She wore a housekeeping uniform, her name tag reading Aisha Mohammed. "I'm sorry to bother you, but I heard about the scholarship fund, the one for people like us." "The Santos Worker Education Fund," Maria said warmly. "Yes, do you want to apply?" Aisha's eyes filled with tears. "I have an engineering degree from Syria, but here it means nothing. I've been cleaning for 3 years, sending money home to my children, hopping." Her voice broke. "Hopping someone would see I'm more than a mop." Maria's throat tightened. She saw herself in this woman's face, the desperation, the hidden brilliance, the exhausting invisibility. "Come to my office at lunch," Maria said. "We'll talk about your background, what you want to do, and how we can help. The fund covers certification programs, credential evaluations, everything you need." Aisha clasped Maria's hand. Thank you, you gave people like us hope." As Aisha left, Maria blinked back tears. This was why she'd said yes, not for the salary or the title or the recognition, for moments like this. "She's the 14th this month," a voice said behind her. Maria turned to find Marcus Chen. He looked different these days, older somehow, but more authentic. The arrogance had been sanded away by humility and hard work. He'd survived the board meeting 6 months ago barely. By presenting Maria's vision so compellingly, they'd given him 1 year to prove transformation was possible. They were 3 months ahead of schedule. 14 lives changed, Maria said. 14 people who won't spend 15 years invisible. "The fund is up to $2.3 million now," Marcus replied. "Donations from other companies, private donors, even some former TitanTech competitors. Everyone wants to be part of the story." "It's not a story," Maria said quietly. "It's people's lives." "I know, that's what I told Forbes." Maria raised an eyebrow. "Forbes?" Marcus looked embarrassed. "They want to do a feature. The CEO who learned humility from a cleaning woman. Terrible title. I told them they should interview you instead, but—" "We do it together or not at all," Maria said firmly. "That was our agreement. No savior narratives. Not me saving the day, not you having some epiphany. Just 2 people learning to see each other." "Agreed." Marcus checked his watch. "AutoNation arrives in an hour. The board will be here too. They want to see the miraculous transformation firsthand." "It's not miraculous," Maria said. "It's just common sense. Listen to workers, value experience, create opportunities, respect everyone." Common sense that somehow eluded corporate America for decades. They walked toward the conference room where the presentation was set up. On the walls were charts showing production increases, cost reductions, worker satisfaction scores that had skyrocketed from 42% to 89%. But Maria's favorite display was simpler. Photos and stories of workers who'd been promoted, who'd started education programs, who'd shared innovations that had saved the company millions. Her coworker Roberto was now a welding supervisor, teaching apprentices his techniques. Louis had designed a conveyor modification that increased packaging speed by 15%. Jenny had created a quality control algorithm that caught defects earlier, saving $300,000 in the first quarter alone. Hidden talent finally visible. The conference room filled with executives, board members, and AutoNation representatives. Maria saw nervous faces. Some people still doubted that a former cleaning woman belonged in leadership. But she also saw respect, especially from workers who'd been invited to participate in the presentation. Marcus began the presentation, but his opening shocked everyone. 6 months ago, I was a terrible CEO, he said bluntly. I measured success only in profit margins and contracts. I valued credentials over competence, and I tried to publicly humiliate one of the most talented people in this building because she threatened my ego. The room went silent. Maria Santos saved this company, not just by fixing an engine, but by showing us what we'd been missing. Hundreds of talented people, ignored because we decided their worth based on their job titles. Marcus looked directly at the AutoNation executives. The efficiency gains you've seen, the innovation, the quality improvements, they came from frontline workers who finally felt empowered to contribute. Maria stood, her hands steady now. No more trembling, no more fear. 6 months ago, I was invisible, she said. Today, I want to introduce you to people who are choosing to be visible. One by one, workers presented their innovations. Aisha's story was shared, a Syrian engineer, now enrolled in a credential evaluation program, who'd already identified 3 manufacturing improvements. The room watched, transfixed, as ordinary people demonstrated extraordinary competence. When the presentations ended, the AutoNation CEO stood. Ms. Santos, Mr. Chen, we came here to inspect a facility. Instead, we witnessed a revolution. We're not just renewing our contract, we're doubling it. And we want to implement your worker innovation program at our own facilities. The room erupted in applause. Later, as executives mingled and celebrated, Maria slipped away to the factory floor. She found the QX9000 still running perfectly and placed her palm against its warm metal surface. Thank you, she whispered to the machine, to her father's memory, to the path that had led her here. Maria. She turned to find her daughters standing nearby. Carmen, Sophia, and her breath caught Miguel, home on military leave, wearing his dress uniform. Mijo, she rushed to embrace him. You didn't tell me you were coming. And Miss Mom's big day, Miguel grinned. Besides, I wanted to see the famous engine that changed everything. They stood together, her children, looking at the massive turbine. Papa would be so proud, Carmen said softly. He already knew, Maria replied. He always said talent doesn't need permission to exist. It just needs someone brave enough to recognize it. As the afternoon sun streamed through the factory windows, Maria Santos, former cleaning woman, current chief diagnostic engineer, future college graduate, stood surrounded by her family and watched workers move confidently through a space that finally valued their worth. She'd spent 15 years invisible. Now she was teaching others how to be seen. And across America, in factories and offices and warehouses, workers were watching Maria's story and asking their own questions. What if I spoke up? What if my ideas matter? What if I'm more than my job title? The revolution wasn't televised. It was whispered in break rooms and shouted in board meetings. It was a 52-year-old woman with a torque wrench and her father's wisdom, reminding the world that extraordinary people exist in ordinary places. You just have to be willing to see them. The end.